Captain Zethkar pressed his clawed hand against the cold metal wall of his ship's bridge. Through the wide window, he could see another dead world spinning slowly in the darkness. This was the 15th planet he had visited this month, and, like all the others, it was completely empty. The Corvani officer's yellow eyes scanned the lifeless surface below. Once, this world had been home to billions of humans. Great cities had covered the land, and massive ships had moved between the stars, carrying their kind to every corner of the galaxy. Now there was nothing but silence. "Sir, the scans are complete," said his second officer, a younger Corvani with bright green scales. "No life signs, no technology, no structures. It's exactly like all the others." Zethkar nodded slowly. He had been patrolling these dead zones for 20 years, ever since he first joined the Corvani fleet. In all that time, he had never found a single trace of what had happened to the humans. They had simply vanished one day, taking everything with them. The older captain remembered the stories his father had told him about the humans. They had been powerful beyond imagination, with ships that could cross the galaxy in days, and weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Yet they had also been strange creatures, caring about things that made no sense to other species. They protected weak planets, helped primitive races, and spent vast amounts of resources on projects that brought them no profit. "Set course for the next system," Zethkar ordered. "Command wants us to check 3 more worlds before we return to base." As his ship turned away from the empty planet, Zethkar wondered for the 1,000th time what could have made the humans leave. They had been winning every war, controlling the richest systems, and growing stronger each year. Then, in a single day, they were gone. 3 star systems away, Dr. Velfara was having much better luck. The tall, blue-skinned alien had been searching through an asteroid field for 6 hours when her scanners finally detected something interesting. Hidden inside a large rock, protected by layers of metal and stone, was a small chamber. Velfara was an expert in finding lost things. Her people, the Ethrani, had long memories and patient minds. They collected artifacts from dead civilizations and studied them to understand how different species had lived and died. She had spent the last 5 years looking for any trace of human technology. Her small ship moved carefully through the floating rocks until she reached the one her sensors had marked. Using a cutting beam, she opened a hole in the asteroid's surface. Inside, just as her equipment had promised, was a metal box about the size of her torso. The box was definitely human. She could tell by the strange symbols carved into its surface, and the unusual metal it was made from. Humans had always used materials that other species found difficult to work with. This box had survived 1,000 years in space without showing any sign of damage. Back in her laboratory on Nexus 7, Velfara worked for days to open the container. Human security systems were notoriously complex, designed to keep their secrets safe from alien minds. Finally, after trying hundreds of different approaches, the box clicked open. Inside were dozens of data crystals, each one containing information that had been carefully preserved. Velfara connected the first crystal to her computer and began to read. What she found made her hands shake with excitement. These were not just random files, but records from the highest levels of human government. Messages between their leaders, planning documents, and most importantly, schedules and procedures for something called the Great Departure. According to the files, the humans had been planning to leave the galaxy for over 50 years before. They actually did it. They had secretly built massive ships in hidden locations, gathered supplies from across their territory, and prepared every human settlement for evacuation. The operation had been so well organized that they managed to move billions of people and countless tons of equipment without any other species noticing. But why had they left? The files mentioned preparation time and returning when ready, but gave no clear explanation. There were references to threats that other species could not understand and responsibilities that humans had to fulfill. Most disturbing of all were the repeated mentions of Judgment Day and testing the galaxy's worth. Valthara sent copies of her discovery to the Ethereal Council immediately. Within hours, representatives from 12 different species were demanding emergency meetings. The news spread quickly through the galactic communication networks, causing panic on some worlds and celebration on others. On the Corvani homeworld, Emperor Krax received the report while sitting on his throne of black stone. A massive reptilian leader had built his empire in the empty space left by humanity's departure. For 1,000 years, his people had ruled over the galaxy's trade routes and military forces. So the humans planned their escape. Krax said to his advisors, "This changes nothing. They are gone, and we rule in their place." But his chief intelligence officer, a scarred veteran named Vorth, was not so confident. "My lord, if they planned to leave, they might also plan to return. The files suggest they took all their technology with them. If they come back, they will be more powerful than ever." Krax's yellow eyes narrowed. The Corvani had always hated the humans for their soft policies and strange ideas about helping weaker species. When humanity vanished, many Corvani had celebrated. Now the possibility of their return filled the Emperor with rage. Meanwhile, on the peaceful world of Benthia, the news was received very differently. The Benthians were a gentle species who valued knowledge and harmony above all else. They had been humanity's closest allies before the disappearance. Elder Lyra, the oldest and wisest of her people, read the translated files with growing hope. The Benthians had always believed that humans were special, destined for something greater than conquest and empire building. Perhaps their departure had been part of a larger plan that would benefit everyone. "Send a message to all Benthian colonies," she instructed her assistants. "Tell our people that the humans may return someday. We must be ready to welcome them back, far away from all the political discussions and military preparations." The discovery was having a different effect on two individuals who had been living quiet lives among the alien populations. Jake Morrison put down his communication device and looked across the trading post where he had worked for 30 years. No one around him suspected that the friendly human trader was anything more than a refugee from humanity's lost colonies. Lisa Park received the same signal in her laboratory, on a research station. For decades, she had posed as a human scientist, studying alien cultures. Her colleagues trusted her completely, never imagining that she was sending detailed reports about their activities to receivers hidden throughout the galaxy. The time for hiding was almost over. Soon, their real purpose would be revealed, and the galaxy would learn that humanity had never truly left. Some had stayed behind, watching and waiting for the right moment to prepare the way for their species' return. As night fell across a dozen worlds, the galaxy's inhabitants looked up at the stars with new fear and hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, humanity was preparing for something that would change everything. The 1,000 years of silence were coming to an end. The exploration ship Starwind's Edge moved through the darkness toward the Sol system like a needle threading through black cloth. Dr. Valthara stood on the bridge, watching the stars grow brighter as they approached humanity's birthplace. After 3 weeks of travel, they were finally going to see Earth with their own eyes. The ship carried representatives from 6 different species, each with their own reasons for making this journey. Commander Raxtool of the Hegemony stood near the weapons console, his 4 arms crossed over his broad chest. The insect-like warrior had insisted on bringing a full military escort, convinced they would find dangerous human weapons hidden in the system. "We should have brought more ships," Raxtool clicked in his harsh voice. "If the humans left traps behind, we will need firepower to deal with them." Dr. Valthara ignored his complaints. She had been fighting to keep this mission peaceful since the day it was approved. Too many species wanted to turn the expedition into a military operation, but she believed they would learn more through careful study than through force. Beside her stood Lyra, the young Benthian scientist who had volunteered to represent her people. The pale, graceful alien had spent years studying human culture and language. Unlike the others, she genuinely hoped to find signs that humanity would return someday. "The star looks exactly as described in the old records," Lyra said softly, pointing toward the yellow sun growing larger in their view. Sol, they called it, the light that warmed their first world. Captain Vextar, the ship's Corvani commander, checked his instruments for the 10th time in an hour. Sensors show 9 planets, just like the ancient star charts indicated. No signs of active technology or ships in the system. As they drew closer to the inner planets, the crew gathered around the main viewing screen. Mars appeared first, its red surface scarred by the remains of human mining operations. The planet looked dead and empty, exactly what they had expected to find. But when Earth came into view, everyone on the bridge fell silent. The planet was beautiful, beyond anything they had imagined. Blue oceans covered most of its surface, while white clouds swirled through a clear atmosphere. Green and brown. Continents showed thick forests and grasslands stretching from coast to coast. It looked like a world that had never known civilization at all. "This cannot be right," Commander Rackstool buzzed in confusion. The records show that Earth was covered with cities. Billions of humans lived there. Where are the ruins? Where are the scars from their industries? Dr. Velthara was running every scan her equipment could manage. The atmosphere is perfectly balanced for supporting life. No pollution, no artificial chemicals. The land masses show no trace of roads, buildings, or mining operations. It's as if the planet has been completely restored to its natural state. They spent 3 days in orbit, using every sensor and scanner available to study the impossible. World below. The results were always the same. Earth showed no sign that an advanced civilization had ever existed there. Yet the restoration was too perfect, too complete to be natural. Someone did this on purpose, Lyra concluded after reviewing all the data. The humans didn't just abandon their homeworld. They healed it completely before they left. Captain Vextar was becoming nervous. "My instruments are detecting something unusual on the ocean floor. There's a large structure beneath the water in the deepest part of the Pacific. It's made of the same metals humans used in their technology." The decision to investigate took 2 more days of arguments. Commander Rackstool wanted to blast the structure from orbit. Convinced it was a weapon, Dr. Velthara insisted they approach it carefully and try to understand its purpose. Finally, Captain Vextar made the choice to send down a small exploration. Team. The submersible craft descended through miles of dark water until it reached the ocean floor. There, sitting in a canyon deeper than any mountain was tall, they found a structure that defied understanding. It looked like a massive flower made of metal and crystal, with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Lights pulsed along, its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "The entire structure is still active," reported the pilot, a nervous Zephyrian whose feathers were turning pale with fear. "Power readings are off the scale. Whatever this thing is, it's been running continuously for 1,000 years." As their craft moved closer, panels on the structure's surface began to glow brighter. Suddenly, a voice filled their communication system, speaking in perfect Corvani, Ethrani, Benthian, and a dozen other languages simultaneously. "Welcome, children of distant stars, to the cradle of humanity. You have come seeking answers to questions you barely understand how to ask." The voice was clearly artificial, but it carried warmth and intelligence that made everyone on the team feel as though they were speaking with a wise parent. Dr. Velthara found her voice first, We are explorers from the Galactic Council. We wish to understand what happened to the human species and why they left this system. The children of Earth departed when the time came for them to grow beyond what this galaxy could teach them, the voice replied. They went to prepare themselves for responsibilities that span more than just these stars. This world was left in my care to be healed and protected until their return. Commander Rackstool pushed forward, his warrior instincts taking over. Return? You mean the humans are coming back? When? How many of them are there? The artificial voice was quiet for a long moment before answering. The children of Earth number in the billions, and they have grown in ways you cannot yet imagine. They will return when this galaxy proves itself worthy of their guidance. Some civilizations have shown promise. Others have revealed themselves to be obstacles to peace and growth. Dr. Valthara felt a chill run through her body. You've been watching us. All this time, you've been observing what we do. Not just I, but others like me, hidden throughout the galaxy. Every world, every ship, every government decision has been recorded and judged. The children of Earth left this galaxy to become something greater than what they were. When they return, they will decide which species deserve to join them in the next phase of existence. The implications hit everyone at once. Humanity hadn't fled in defeat or fear. They had left as part of a plan that had been running for 1,000 years. During that time, they had been judging every species in the galaxy, deciding who was worthy of their return. Lyra spoke up, her voice trembling with hope and fear. What must we do to prove ourselves worthy? Continue to grow, to learn, to choose cooperation over conquest. The children of Earth remember their friends and their enemies. They remember which species helped the weak and which ones chose to dominate them. When they return, those memories will guide their decisions. The structure's lights began to dim, signaling that the conversation was ending. But the voice had one final message. Tell the galaxy that the time of judgment approaches. The children of Earth have learned much during their exile, and they are nearly ready to return home. When they do, the galaxy will be changed forever. Some will welcome this change. Others will resist it. All will discover that humanity's mercy has limits, but their justice is absolute. The communication system went silent, leaving the exploration team alone in the dark water. Above them, Earth continued its slow rotation, a perfect world waiting for its children to come home. As the Starwind's Edge began its journey back to civilization, every person aboard knew that they carried news that would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity was not extinct. They were coming back, and they would be the judges of everything that had been built in their absence. Dr. Valthara stared out at the stars and wondered what humanity had become during their 1,000-year exile. Whatever they had transformed into, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The first sign of change came on Korath Prime, deep in the heart of Corvani space. Mining supervisor Grector was checking the deep excavation sites when his sensors detected something impossible. Far beneath the planet's surface, in tunnels that his people had never dug, machines were starting to work. The sound was faint at first, just a distant humming that seemed to come from the rock itself. But over the next few hours, it grew stronger. Seismic monitors registered vibrations from 20 different locations across the planet. Something massive was waking up underground. Get me a deep scan of Sector 7, Grector ordered his team. I want to know what's making that noise. The results made his blood run cold. Buried 3 miles beneath the surface was a factory complex larger than most cities. The machinery inside was unlike anything the Corvani had ever built. Sleek, efficient, and completely automated, it was producing devices that their best scientists couldn't identify. Similar reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. On the trading world of New Centauri, an ancient space station, that had been dark for 1,000 years suddenly blazed with light. Its sensors began scanning every ship that passed through the system, recording their cargo, destinations, and crew members dot in the Helix Nebula. A structure the size of a small moon emerged from behind a gas cloud where it had been hiding. Its surface was covered with equipment that could detect life signs from hundreds of light years away. Within hours of activation, it had cataloged every inhabited world in a dozen star systems. Ambassador Creeth of the Diplomatic Corps found herself dealing with panic from every corner of the galaxy. Her communication systems were overwhelmed with messages from frightened governments demanding explanations she didn't have. The Vorthan Confederacy is mobilizing their entire fleet, reported her aide, a young diplomat whose tentacles were quivering with stress. They think the human installations are preparation for an invasion. Creeth had been expecting this reaction. Fear made species do stupid things, and right now, half the galaxy was terrified. Send a message to the Confederacy leadership. Tell them that any aggressive action against the human sites will be considered an act of war against the diplomatic corps. But even as she tried to maintain peace, Creeth knew that some conflicts were unavoidable. The Corvani Empire had already declared the awakening installations to be a threat to galactic security. Emperor Krax was gathering his fleets for what he called preemptive strike against humanity's abandoned technology. On a small trading station near the frontier, Jake Morrison received the signal he had been waiting for his entire life. Message came through channels that no alien species knew existed, transmitted by methods that defied their understanding of physics. It was simple, direct, and changed everything. Phase 3 initiated. Begin Revelation Protocol. Prepare for homecoming. Jake looked around the market where he had worked for 30 years. Alien traders haggled over prices while their children played between the stalls. These beings had been his neighbors, his customers, his friends. Soon they would learn that he had been lying to them about who he really was. He wasn't the only one receiving the signal. Across the galaxy, hundreds of humans who had lived hidden among alien populations were getting the same message. Lisa Park put down her research notes and stared at the laboratory where she had spent decades studying alien cultures. Her colleagues trusted her completely, never suspecting that her real purpose was to observe and report on their activities. The revelation began slowly, with subtle signs that only the most observant aliens noticed. Jake started making purchases that didn't match his usual patterns, buying supplies that seemed oddly specific. Lisa began asking questions about government policies and military capabilities that went beyond normal scientific curiosity. But the real shock came when they started demonstrating abilities that no ordinary human should possess. On the research station where Lisa worked, a reactor malfunction threatened to kill everyone aboard. As alien engineers struggled with repairs they didn't understand, Lisa calmly walked into the danger zone without any protective equipment. The radiation that should have killed her in seconds seemed to flow around her body like water around a stone. Her colleagues watched in amazement as she repaired the complex machinery with tools that appeared in her hands from nowhere. The work that should have taken days was completed in minutes, using techniques that their best scientists couldn't begin to explain. "How did you do that?" asked Dr. Nefara, the station's chief engineer. "That radiation level would have killed any organic being instantly." Lisa smiled sadly. "Because I'm not exactly what you think I am, old friend. And it's time you learned the truth." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Humans who had lived quiet lives as traders, researchers, and diplomats were revealing capabilities that seemed impossible. They could survive in environments that would kill other beings, understand technologies they had never studied, and communicate across vast distances without any equipment. The truth was becoming clear to the galaxy's intelligence agencies. Humans had never truly disappeared. Some had remained behind, watching and waiting for orders that had finally come. They were not ordinary refugees or explorers, but something far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Emperor Krax received the intelligence reports while planning his attack on the human installations. The massive Corvani leader crushed the datapad in his clawed hand as he read about human agents embedded in governments across the galaxy. How many of them are there? He roared at his intelligence chief. We don't know, my lord. Our analysts estimate hundreds, possibly thousands. They've been living among us for generations, and we never suspected. Some have even served in our own military forces. The implications were staggering. If humans had been watching the galaxy, for 1,000 years, they knew everything about every species' strengths and weaknesses. They had studied alien technology, learned about military capabilities, and observed political systems from the inside. Voth, the Emperor's most trusted advisor, spoke the words that everyone was thinking. My lord, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it at any time. The fact that they remained hidden suggests they were waiting for something specific. But Krax was too proud and too angry to consider peaceful solutions. Ready the fleets for immediate departure. We will strike at the human installations before they can complete whatever they're planning. On the peaceful world of Benthia, Elder Lyra was having very different thoughts. The wise old alien had always believed that humanity was special, destined for something greater than ordinary conquest. The revelation that humans had been watching over the galaxy filled her with hope rather than fear. Send a message to all Benthian colonies, she instructed her council. Tell our people to welcome any humans who reveal themselves. They have been protecting us all along, and we must show them the same kindness. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was preparing for the most difficult conversation of his life. He had requested a meeting with the trading station's council, claiming he had important information about the recent events. The alien leaders who had known him for decades gathered in the conference room, expecting to hear insights from their trusted human colleague. My friends, Jake began, his voice heavy with emotion. I need to tell you something that will change how you see me forever. My name is Jake Morrison, and I am human, but I am not what I've pretended to be. The council members looked confused. They had always known he was human. What was he trying to say? I was born on a ship beyond the edge of this galaxy, Jake continued. My people didn't disappear 1,000 years ago. We left to prepare for our return. Some of us stayed behind to watch over you and report on how the galaxy developed in our absence. The silence that followed was deafening. Council leader Vrake Tall, an elderly Zephyrian who had considered Jake a close friend, spoke first. You've been spying on us? All these years, you've been lying about who you are? Jake felt tears running down his face. Yes, but not out of hatred or desire to harm you. We were guardians, protectors. My job was to make sure that peaceful beings like yourselves were safe, and that dangerous species couldn't threaten innocent lives. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place as hidden humans revealed their true nature to the aliens they had lived among. Some reactions were angry, some fearful, but others showed understanding and even gratitude. The galaxy was learning that humanity's 1,000-year absence had been an illusion. They had never truly left. They had been watching, judging, and preparing for a return that would reshape civilization itself. As reports flooded in from across known space, one thing became clear to every government and military leader. The time for secrets was ending. Humanity was ready to show the galaxy what they had become during their long exile, and nothing would ever be the same again. The edge of the galaxy had always been a place of darkness and silence. No stars shone in the empty void between galaxies, and no ships traveled through the endless black. But on this day, reality itself began to tear apart. The first sign was a shimmer in space, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then the shimmer grew larger, twisting and bending until it formed a hole in the fabric of the universe itself. Through this impossible opening, something vast and bright began to emerge. Admiral Kyle Brooks stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the Earth's Promise completed its transition from folded space back into normal reality. The ship was massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, stretching for miles in every direction and humming with power that bent light around its hull. Behind the flagship came more ships, dozens of them, each one a masterpiece of technology that shouldn't exist. They moved without engines, turned without thrusters, and communicated across impossible distances in ways that alien science couldn't explain. "Navigation confirms our position, Admiral," reported his second officer, Commander Beth Clark. "We're at the galactic rim, exactly where the calculations predicted we'd arrive." Kyle nodded, his eyes fixed on the scanner displays showing the galaxy spread out before them. Somewhere in that collection of stars were the worlds where humanity had been born, grown, and learned to reach for something greater than themselves. "Send the signal to all ships," he ordered. "Begin Phase 4 operations. It's time to let the galaxy know we've come home." 3 systems away, the Corvani patrol ship, Vengeance, was conducting routine scans when their sensors detected something impossible. Space itself was folding, creating patterns that their instruments couldn't measure or understand. Captain Vorthek stared at his displays in confusion. "Communications? Are you receiving any signals from that area?" "Nothing, sir. But our long-range sensors are showing massive energy readings. Whatever's out there, it's bigger than anything in our databases." Before Vorthak could respond, his ship's systems began acting strangely. Lights flickered, gravity fluctuated, and the engines made sounds they'd never made before. Then a voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect Corvani, despite coming from empty space. "Attention, vessel of the Corvani Empire. You are in the presence of humanity's first. Return fleet. Maintain your current position and prepare to receive our diplomatic representative." The Corvani captain's blood turned cold. The humans were supposed to be extinct, vanished without a trace. Yet here they were, speaking to his ship across impossible distances and doing things to his equipment that no known technology could accomplish. A new contact appeared on his sensors, moving toward his ship at speeds that should have been impossible. As it drew closer, he could see that it was unlike any vessel he'd ever encountered. It looked more like a work of art than a machine, with flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to shift and change as he watched. The alien ship docked with his vessel without making any physical contact. Instead, the two hulls simply merged together, creating a connection that shouldn't have been possible. Moments later, the airlock opened to reveal a human woman in a uniform he didn't recognize. Captain Nina Hayes stepped aboard the Corvani ship with the confidence of someone who knew she was completely safe. Her scanners had already analyzed every weapon and defense system on the vessel, and she knew that nothing the Corvani possessed could harm her. "Greetings, Captain," she said in perfect Corvani. "I am Captain Hayes of the human fleet. I come with a message from my people to yours." Vorthek tried to maintain his dignity despite the fear clawing at his chest. "What do you want with us? The Corvani Empire will not submit to threats." Nina smiled, and something in her expression made the alien captain step backward. "We're not here to threaten anyone, Captain. We're here to reclaim our place as guardians of this galaxy. Your empire has been evaluated, and while we find your methods crude, we recognize that you've maintained a certain level of order." She handed him a data crystal that appeared in her palm from nowhere. "This contains our assessment of your species and our requirements for your future conduct. Study it carefully. Your Emperor has 3 days to respond before we begin implementing changes ourselves." Before Vorthak could ask what she meant, the human woman was gone. The airlock sealed itself, and her ship detached from his vessel as smoothly as it had arrived. He was left staring at the crystal, wondering what horrors or miracles it might contain. Similar encounters were happening throughout the galaxy as human ships made contact with every major civilization. Each meeting followed the same pattern: a demonstration of impossible technology, a polite but firm message, and a demand for response within a specific time frame. On the Ethereal Council's primary station, emergency sessions were being held around the clock. Representatives from every major species were demanding answers that no one could provide. Ambassador Kreeth had aged 10 years in the past week. The stress of managing 12 different species' panic responses was taking its toll on her health. "We need to understand what the humans want before we can decide how to respond," she told the assembled delegates. "What they want is irrelevant," declared General Zax of the Hegemony, his insect mandibles clicking with anger. "They disappeared for 1,000 years and now return making demands. We should unite all species against this threat." Elder Lyra of the Benthians spoke up from her position at the council table. "Perhaps we should listen to what they're actually saying instead of assuming the worst." The human representative who contacted our world spoke of guidance and protection, not conquest. The debate continued for hours, with some species calling for war while others urged caution. But their arguments became meaningless when the human fleet's true capabilities were demonstrated. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the council in person, having somehow appeared in their supposedly secure chamber without triggering any alarms or opening any doors. The human scientist looked exactly like the species the council members remembered from a millennium ago. Yet something about her presence suggested vast changes beneath the familiar surface. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, despite speaking barely above a whisper, "I bring greetings from humanity and our assessment of galactic civilization during our absence." Security forces were moving to surround her, but Elena simply raised her hand, and every weapon in the chamber stopped working. Guards found their energy rifles powerless, while automated defense systems shut down completely. "Please don't be alarmed," Elena continued, as if nothing had happened. "We're here to help, not to harm. For 1,000 years, we've been watching your species grow and develop. Some of you have impressed us with your progress. Others have disappointed us with your choices." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing detailed reports on every civilization in the galaxy. The information was impossibly complete, covering everything from population statistics to secret military projects. The Benthians have developed remarkable medical technologies and maintained peace with their neighbors. The Ethrani have preserved knowledge and culture from dozens of extinct species. The Zephyrians have created art that touches the soul and inspires growth. The positive assessments brought relieved smiles to some faces, but Elena wasn't finished. The Corvani Empire has maintained order through fear and oppression, stunting the growth of dozens of species. The hegemony has devoted itself to perfecting ways to kill rather than create. The Vorthan Confederacy has poisoned 6 worlds in pursuit of industrial expansion. The accused species began protesting, but Elena's voice cut through their objections. "With absolute authority, we didn't return to punish you for past mistakes. We came back because this galaxy is our responsibility, and we've grown tired of watching civilizations harm themselves and others through ignorance and cruelty." Ambassador Kreeth found her voice despite her fear. "What do you intend to do with you?" Elena's expression softened, showing genuine compassion. "Help you become what you're capable of being. Some species will welcome our guidance. Others will resist until they understand that we offer growth, not subjugation. A few may prove so dangerous that stronger measures become necessary." She began to fade from view, becoming translucent like a ghost. You have 7 days to study our assessments and prepare your responses. After that, we begin the process of rebalancing galactic civilization. Those who cooperate will find us generous teachers. Those who resist will discover that our patience has limits. Elena vanished completely, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The holographic displays remained, showing the detailed evaluations of every species and their projected paths forward under human guidance. Outside the station's windows, the stars looked the same as they always had. But everyone in the chamber knew that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had returned, and they brought with them power beyond imagination and plans that would reshape civilization itself. The age of alien independence was ending. The age of human guardianship had begun. The 7 days of waiting ended with changes that swept across the galaxy like a storm. On the Corvani homeworld, Emperor Krax woke to find his palace surrounded by human ships that had appeared overnight without triggering any alarms. The massive vessels hung in the sky like silver clouds, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. General Marcus Stone materialized in the Emperor's throne room, while the guards were still reaching for their weapons. The human commander looked ordinary enough, wearing a simple uniform with no visible technology. But when the Corvani soldiers fired their energy weapons at him, the beams passed through his body as if he were made of light. "Emperor Krax," Marcus said in a voice that echoed through the chamber, "your time as ruler of this empire has ended. Your people will be relocated to worlds better suited for their development, and your military forces will be disbanded." The Emperor's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "You dare enter my palace and make demands? The Corvani Empire will never surrender to alien invaders." Marcus nodded sadly. "We hoped you would choose cooperation, but we prepared for this response. Your empire was built on conquest and oppression. Under your rule, 17 species were enslaved, and 43 worlds were stripped of their resources. This cannot continue." Before Krax could respond, every weapon in the palace simply stopped existing. Soldiers watched in amazement as their rifles dissolved into glowing particles that drifted away like dust. The Emperor's ceremonial sword crumbled in his hands, leaving him defenseless. "Your people are not evil," Marcus continued, "but they have been taught that strength comes from dominating others. We will help them learn that true strength comes from building and protecting. The process will take time, but it will benefit everyone." Similar scenes were playing out across Corvani space. Military bases found their weapons gone and their ships unable to move. Government buildings were surrounded by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Within hours, an empire that had ruled through fear for centuries was completely powerless, but the humans were not cruel in their victory. Corvani civilians found food, medicine, and clean water appearing in their cities. Children who had been trained for war were given books and art supplies instead. Worlds that had been polluted by industrial expansion began showing signs of healing as human. Technology cleaned the air and water that the hegemony tried to fight back with suicide attacks and hidden weapons. Their insect warriors threw themselves against human positions with fanatic determination, believing that death in battle was the highest honor. But their efforts were futile against beings who could step between dimensions and reshape matter with their thoughts. Admiral Janet Price stood on the bridge of her ship, watching as hegemony fighters crashed harmlessly against her vessel's shields. The alien pilots were brave, she had to admit, but they were fighting with tools and tactics that were 1,000 years out of date. "Open communication with the hegemony fleet," she ordered. "I want to speak to their commander." General Zax's face appeared on the main screen, his mandibles clicking with rage. "Human invaders. We will never surrender. Death before dishonor." Janet sighed. She had read the psychological profiles of hegemony leadership and she knew that reasoning with them would be difficult. "General, your courage is admirable, but your cause is hopeless. We don't want to destroy your people. We want to help them. Find better ways to live. We need no help from outsiders. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the way of the universe." "No," Janet replied firmly. "That is the way of animals. Intelligent beings can choose to protect the weak and build something better than endless war." She gestured, and every hegemony ship in the fleet suddenly found itself unable to fire its weapons. Their engines still worked, their life support functioned, but every system designed to cause harm simply shut down. "You have a choice, General. You can spend the rest of your life trying to fight us with useless weapons, or you can help us teach your people that there are better ways to be strong." The transformation was not limited to military conquest. On worlds throughout the galaxy, humans were implementing changes that seemed like magic to the local populations. Polluted rivers ran clear overnight. Dead forests sprouted new growth in a matter of hours. Cities that had been choking on their own waste found themselves surrounded by gardens and clean air. Dr. Rachel Thompson led one of many teams working to heal damaged worlds. She stood on what had once been a toxic wasteland on the industrial planet of Vex Prime, watching as her equipment transformed poisoned soil into fertile earth. "The contamination goes down almost a mile," reported her assistant, a young human named Peter Walsh, who had been born during the exile. The previous inhabitants really did a thorough job of destroying this place. Rachel nodded as she studied the readings. The Vorthans were so focused on short-term profits that they never thought about long-term consequences. It's going to take weeks to repair all the damage. Around them, massive machines that looked more like living creatures than mechanical. Devices were working to heal the planet. They consumed toxic waste and produced clean water, breathed in poisonous gases, and exhaled pure oxygen, and turned barren rock into soil that could support new life. On the peaceful world of Benthia, the changes were gentler, but no less dramatic. Elder Lyra watched in wonder as human medical technology eliminated diseases that had plagued her people for thousands of years. Children who had been born with genetic defects were healed completely. Elderly Benthians found their bodies restored to the strength of youth. "How is this possible?" she asked Dr. Helen Carter, the human scientist overseeing the medical assistants. Helen smiled warmly. "We learned to work with life itself during our exile. Your people have always valued healing and growth over conquest and destruction. We're simply giving you the tools to do what you've always wanted to do." But not every change was welcomed. The Zephyrian art colonies were struggling to understand human aesthetic technology that could create sculptures from pure light and music from the movement of atoms. Some artists felt threatened by capabilities that seemed to make their own skills obsolete. Master sculptor Clive N. watched a human demonstrate equipment that could create perfect artwork from nothing but thought and intention. If anyone can make art this easily, what purpose do artists serve? The human artist, a woman named Carol Davis, understood his concern. Technology doesn't replace creativity, it amplifies it. These tools respond to your imagination, but they still require an artist's vision to create something meaningful. "Would you like to try?" Cliven hesitantly placed his hands on the strange device. As his thoughts flowed into the machine, colors and shapes began appearing in the air around him. But they were his colors, his shapes, expressing ideas and emotions. That came from his unique perspective. "The tools are just tools," Carol explained. "The art still comes from you." Meanwhile, resistance movements were forming among species that refused to accept human guidance. Secret meetings were held in hidden locations, and desperate plans were made to fight back against the invaders. But the humans seemed to know about every plot before it could be executed. Weapons caches were found and peacefully dismantled. Communication networks were monitored so completely that rebels found themselves talking to human agents instead of each other. Commander Ryan Lai was responsible for dealing with one particularly determined resistance cell on the former Corvani colony of Theta 7. The rebels had gathered in an abandoned factory, planning to build bombs from industrial chemicals. Instead of attacking them, Ryan simply appeared in their meeting room and sat down at their table. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "you're trying to fight a war with weapons that can't hurt us against people who don't want to harm you. Wouldn't your time be better spent learning how to help your people adjust to the changes?" The rebel leader, a scarred Corvani veteran named Grexstar, snarled at him. "We will never accept human rule. Our ancestors conquered the stars without alien help, and look where that led," Ryan replied sadly. "Endless wars, polluted worlds, billions of beings living in fear. We're offering you a chance to build something better." He stood up and walked toward the door, then turned back to face the confused rebels. "The factory you're hiding in will be converted into a school next week. Your children will learn science, art, and philosophy instead of how to kill their neighbors. You can fight this change, or you can help make it happen peacefully. The choice is yours." As Ryan vanished, the rebels were left staring at each other in confusion. Everything they had been taught about resistance and warfare seemed meaningless. Against opponents who could appear and disappear at will, who knew their plans before they made them, and who responded to violence with healing instead of revenge. Across the galaxy, the same realization was spreading. Humanity had returned with power beyond imagination, but they were using that power to build rather than destroy. Species that had expected conquest found themselves receiving gifts of technology and knowledge. Worlds that had been preparing for war discovered that their new rulers were more interested in teaching than commanding. The age of human guardianship was not what anyone had expected. It was better. 6 months after humanity's return, the galaxy looked like a completely different place. The massive space station that now floated at the galactic center had been built in just 3 weeks, using technology that turned raw space dust into gleaming metal and crystal. It served as the meeting place for the new Galactic Senate, where representatives from every species worked together to build a better future. President Andrew Clark stood before the assembled delegates, looking out at faces that represented dozens of different worlds and cultures. Some were former enemies who had learned to work together. Others were old allies who had remained faithful through the long years of humanity's absence. 6 months ago, we returned to a galaxy torn by war and poisoned by greed. Andrew began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Today, we gather in peace to sign a new agreement that will guide us all toward a brighter tomorrow. The Galactic Compact had taken months to negotiate, with input from every species and careful consideration of each culture's needs and values. Unlike the old treaties that had been imposed by force, this document had been created through cooperation and mutual respect. Elder Lyra of the Benthians was the first to sign, her graceful hands moving across the document with reverence. "On behalf of my people, I pledge our commitment to peace, healing, and the protection of all life." Former Emperor Krax, now simply Krax the Representative, added his signature next. The once proud ruler had spent months learning about cooperation and service instead of conquest and domination. "The Corvani people commit to using our strength to protect the weak and build instead of destroy." One by one, every species added their agreement to the compact. Even the hegemony, led by a new council that had replaced their war-obsessed generals, pledged to find ways to be strong that didn't require hurting others. Dr. Susan Davis watched the ceremony from the observation deck, her enhanced perception allowing her to see the emotional currents flowing through the assembled delegates. Fear was still present, but it was being overwhelmed by hope and excitement about the future. "It's remarkable how quickly they've adapted," said Captain Tony Miller, joining her at the viewing window. "I wasn't sure some of these species would ever learn to work together." Susan smiled, remembering the early days when every contact had been a potential crisis. They were ready for change. They just needed someone to show them that it was possible. Tony nodded, thinking about his own journey from military officer to teacher and explorer. "Speaking of change, are you sure you want to leave all this behind? For another deep space mission?" "The galaxy is in good hands now," Susan replied. "But there are other galaxies out there, other civilizations that might need guidance. Humanity's job isn't finished just because we've fixed the problems here." The signing ceremony concluded with celebrations that lasted for days. Across the galaxy, beings who had never trusted each other before were working together on projects that would benefit everyone. Corvani engineers helped Benthian doctors build new hospitals. Zephyrian artists collaborated with human scientists to create beauty that served practical purposes on Earth, which had become the galaxy's new center of learning and diplomacy. Students from dozens of species attended universities that taught everything from advanced physics to ancient poetry. The restored planet served as a symbol of what could be accomplished when intelligence and compassion worked together. Chait Morrison walked through the gardens of New Geneva, watching alien children play together in parks where their parents had once planned each other's destruction. His years of hiding among alien populations had taught him how much these beings were capable of when given the chance to grow. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said Lisa Park, joining him on the path that wound between flowering trees and crystal fountains. "Sometimes I can hardly believe we actually pulled it off." Jake nodded, thinking about all the friends he had made during his long exile among the alien populations. The hardest part was maintaining hope during the dark years, watching them fight each other when they could have been building something amazing together. But they were learning, even when they didn't realize it, Lisa pointed out. Every mistake taught them something. Every conflict showed them the cost of choosing violence over cooperation. In orbit above Earth, the massive ships of humanity's exploration fleet were preparing for their next mission. The galaxy was stable and growing, ready to manage its own affairs with guidance from the human observers who would remain behind. Commander Tony Miller stood on the bridge of the newly built starship Harmony, watching as the final supplies were loaded aboard. His crew was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Humans working alongside Benthian doctors, Zephyrian navigators, and even reformed Corvani security officers. "Final systems check complete, Commander," reported Lieutenant Sarah Wilson, the ship's human chief engineer. "All departments report ready for departure." "Engineering status?" Tony asked, turning to the ship's Corvani technical officer. "All systems functioning perfectly, sir," replied Grektal, a same engineer who had once discovered human machinery awakening beneath his planet's surface. "It's still hard to believe that we're working together like this," Tony smiled. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But people can change when they're given the right opportunities. The Harmony was bound for the Andromeda Galaxy, where long-range sensors had detected signs of intelligent life. The mission would take years, even with humanity's advanced propulsion systems. But the crew was excited about the possibility of making contact with entirely new forms of life, like Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as the ship's chief xenobiologist, was particularly eager to study alien cultures that had developed completely independently from their own galaxy's influences. "Imagine what we might learn from beings who evolved under completely different conditions," she said during the final briefing as the Harmony and its escort ships prepared to depart. Representatives from every major species gathered to wish them well. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing the universe that the age of isolation and conflict was truly over. President Andrew Clark gave the farewell address, his words carrying to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "Today, We send forth explorers who represent not just humanity, but all of us. They carry our hopes, our dreams, and our commitment to spreading peace and cooperation wherever they go. The ships began to move, accelerating toward the galactic rim and the vast emptiness beyond. As they disappeared into folded space, leaving reality behind for the journey between galaxies, those who remained knew that this was just the beginning. Back on Earth, in a quiet laboratory overlooking the restored Pacific Ocean, Dr. Vel Farah was working on her latest project. The Ethrony scientist had become one of humanity's closest collaborators, helping to preserve and share the knowledge of dozens of ancient civilizations. The new archive is ready for its first entries, she reported to her human colleague, Dr. Michael Foster. We can now preserve not just information, but the actual thoughts and experiences of beings from across the galaxy. Michael nodded, understanding the significance of what they were creating. Future generations will be able to learn not just what happened, but what it felt like to live through these changes. They'll understand why cooperation is better than conflict because they'll experience it themselves. As the years passed, the galaxy continued to grow and evolve under humanity's gentle guidance. New technologies were developed that could heal both planets and souls. Art forms emerged that combined the creativity of dozens of species. Scientific discoveries were made that expanded everyone's understanding of the universe. The Galactic Senate met regularly to address new challenges and opportunities. Disputes were resolved through discussion rather than warfare. Resources were shared based on need rather than military strength. Children grew up believing that cooperation was natural and war was an ancient mistake that would never be repeated. In the depths of space, human observers continued their patient watch, ready to help if problems arose, but content to let the galaxy's inhabitants shape their own destiny. They had learned during their long exile that the greatest strength was knowing when not to use power, and the greatest wisdom was teaching others to find their own way forward. The galaxy that humanity had left 1,000 years ago had been torn by conflict and poisoned by greed. The galaxy they had returned to was learning to heal itself. But the galaxy they were building together was something entirely new, a civilization based on mutual respect, shared knowledge, and the understanding that every form of life had something valuable to contribute. Humanity had kept their promise. They had returned when the galaxy was ready to learn, and they had brought with them not conquest or domination, but the chance for everyone to become something better than they had ever imagined possible. The age of human guardianship had begun, but it was not an age of human rule. It was an age of growth, cooperation, and infinite possibility for all the children of the stars.